What was that? The Thunder suffer a brutal loss against San Antonio. What went wrong for Oklahoma City? We're about to find out.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Styles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO ThunderPod. Also on Blue Sky, Rylan Styles if you're over there. Yeah, the Thunder lost to the San Antonio Spurs after following a perfect script a week ago. This plays off to a shaky start. We'll talk more about it on today's show, brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even got to win the $5 play. You just are going to receive $50 win or lose. It's guaranteed at Prize Picks. Run your game. It felt like the Thunder became rhythmic over the last couple of seasons, right? You knew what to expect. You were going to have a Shai MVP game. Somebody was going to step up. The Thunder were going to outwork you. They were going to have more intensity than you, and they were just going to overwhelm teams. Fast forward to this year, and unlike a year ago, the Thunder have horrid injury luck. Last year, Oklahoma City didn't really deal with anything significant. Shai had his quad contusion one of the final 2 weeks of the season, which put a little bit of a damper on things. J-Dub dealt with an ankle off and on, but didn't really hinder them from their end goals. A lot different this year. Before training camp began, you lost Kenrich Williams. In training camp, you lost Jalen Williams from Arkansas. Hartenstein breaks his hand. Chet Holmgren fractures his hip. Caruso misses time with a hip injury. And these things pile up, and they tax you, and they tax you. But honestly, today wasn't about injuries. Today was about abnormalities. Like this was not normal. This was not a Thunder-branded game. I hear you. And I've been the one beating the drum for how taxing it is to play small ball for 48 minutes, for how the injuries have really muddied the waters a bit. But when you face the San Antonio Spurs down in San Antone, and they don't have Wembanyama, they don't have Vassell, they don't have Jeremy Sohan, you should win that game. If you play to win the game and you play the way that Mark teams play, it should have been a win. And you should have been able to follow the script that's been laid out, frankly, his entire tenure. Again, even when this team was a 20-win team, the Thunder, you could always count on them to bring it defensively, to play their butts off, and to compete. And that's not what happened tonight. Now, to cover all of the bases, it's really hard to win this way. Help is going to come. Like, eventually, you're going to have Hartenstein back and Jay Will back. And I don't think that this loss determines anything about this season. I don't think that this loss or these injuries, as long as things play out how we expect, hurt you in terms of, they do hurt you, but hinder you from becoming the 1 seed or a home court advantage team or whatever. You can oftentimes overreact to things. You can also underreact to things. And the truth is typically in the middle. My biggest takeaway from this game is that this is now 2 straight contests where the Thunder are sloppy, the Thunder can't execute, the Thunder at times lack intensity and lack physicality and lack focus defensively. And that's just not what you saw a year ago. And against Dallas, you can write that off like a tax write-off because it was kind of baked in to the circumstances. I'll stand by that if I told you the moment that Chet Holmgren got hurt, that the Thunder would rip off 3 straight wins and only fall to the Dallas Mavericks, who are just uniquely designed to beat the Thunder, everybody signs on that dotted line. But even with those injuries, this one is a tough pill to swallow because you should have beat this Spurs team. After a back and forth first quarter, the Thunder felt like they kind of had things under control a little bit in the second quarter. They got up by 10 points, but that lead quickly dissipated, and eventually you lost it outright heading into halftime after you really just fell off a cliff, and you dug yourself in a 21-point hole to the point where a 21-7 run got you within a couple possessions. Didn't even, truly get you back into this game. And after 12 lead changes and 3 ties, the Spurs walk away with a 110-104 win without Wemby, without Sohan, without Vassell. That just cannot happen. Like, you cannot bury yourself in these games. And even in the end, after that 21-7 run, the Spurs kept inviting the Thunder to take this game over. They were saying, here, have it. Take this game away. And the Thunder politely declined. They did not want any part of this win. And that's what's concerning. Because we've seen this Spurs team blow big leads before. That's been their MO this season, typically. And you can chalk that up to it's a young team that does not know how to win. But the Spurs have routinely given this kind of game away, and they tried to give it away down the stretch, and they still out-executed you in the end. Look at those final possessions by the Thunder. It was a lot of slop. It was a lot of missed opportunities. And that's just not good enough. And this is a game where, everyone within the organization will tell you that this is not their brand of basketball. This is not what they expect, and not what they expect no matter who's in or out of the lineup. Because this Thunder team should have still overwhelmed the Spurs with their talent. And this is the sad reality. The Thunder out-rebounded the Spurs 58-53. The Thunder forced their 20 turnovers and only turned the ball over 13 times. A little high, considering that you're trying to offset so many things. 13's not a bad night, but whenever you're trying to overcome so many obstacles, 13 turnovers is a little high. But you let up 41% from beyond the arc, and a few of those were just jaw-dropping shots like Chris Paul at the end. 46% from the floor from the Spurs. And the Thunder shoot 41% from the floor and 30% from three. They could not buy a bucket from beyond the arc. Points in the paint goes to San Antonio 36-36. I mean, it's like a draw, and the Thunder typically win that. Even while the Thunder out-rebound the Spurs win second chance points 21-12. And the Thunder did their typical dominating of fast break points 24-6. So it really just came down to, one, the Thunder missed plenty of open looks. And two, the Thunder just were not connected defensively for 48 minutes. And admitting on the front end that's very tough to do, considering the circumstances, it's still inexcusable against San Antonio. This is a bad loss. Now, granted, in an 82-game season, bad losses are going to happen. But what I think is the most interesting is the uncharacteristic nature of 2 straight games being flat. Like, the majority of this game, the Thunder were flat. The majority of that game against Dallas, the Thunder were flat. You have another opportunity against Portland. A year ago, you only went on 2-game losing streaks. Got to go get that against Portland. It's another team that's not going to roll over. And the Thunder deserve credit for not rolling over, because in games where you can't hit the broadside of a barn, typically NBA teams do pack it in, and the Thunder did not. But you wouldn't have been in that scenario had you played better for 45 minutes before that. Nonetheless, though, we'll continue talking about this game, including Adam Flagler, first half minutes, and more. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Get ready to tackle the NFL season with America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you got a hunch in the middle of the game or you want to bet from the start, go check it out today at FanDuel.com. And right now, you can place a $5 bet, your first $5 bet as a new customer, and get $150 in bonus bets if you win at FanDuel.com. You can also bet on the NBA if that's more your thing than the NFL, including tomorrow, where the Thunder are 13.5-point favorites against the Portland Trailblazers. Go check it out today at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. 2 straight losses for Oklahoma City. And in this game, undoubtedly frustrating, undoubtedly an inexcusable loss. For Oklahoma City, the Thunder saw SGA go for 32 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. He did have 4 turnovers, which is a tick high for him. 5 for 8 from beyond the arc, though, and 55% shooting from the floor is a strong, strong game from Shai. You got a strong game from Jalen Williams, 27 points for him, 10 boards, 6 assists, 5 steals, 1 turnover, and a personal run for him. It was like a personal 7-0 run that really allowed the Thunder to have this game within reach down the stretch. But he went 50% from 3. I'm sorry, 50% from the floor and 0 for 6 from 3. In a game where you needed someone to step up from beyond the arc, it was not a good enough game in that category. But J-Dub is really the reason why you were able to even compete in this one. So you got the game from your 2 stars. So why did you lose to San Antonio? Well, the injuries, but also Lu Dort had a vintage Lu Dort game, which is not a good thing. It's not a good thing, actually. Awful at the rim, awful from beyond the arc. He finishes 2 for 12, 16%. He put up Peyton Manning at Tennessee from beyond the arc. Not good. Not good. 2 for 8 from 3. 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Wiggins was spectacular early. Only played 20 minutes. I would have liked to see that marker jump a little higher for Wiggins because he was really active. A couple of his misses were kind of those plays that we used to talk about with Trey Mann, where if you pause the clip as the shot's going up, you feel good, and it just didn't go in. But defensively, he was really active. Offensively, he's really good at playing off of guys like J-Dub and Shai, which helped this roster. And he went 3 for 7 from 3 as one of the only good shooting nights besides Shai from beyond the arc. And Cason Wallace also had some really big threes in this one. So it was really those 3 guys that did the damage from three-point land. Would have liked to see Wiggins play more. Cason Wallace, I thought this was one of his better games because he was able to do it on both ends. Look, I think that Cason Wallace, whenever it rains, it pours. And so because he's been shooting the ball so poorly, people have overreacted to every facet of his game. I think Cason Wallace has been doing everything at a really high level except shoot the ball from 3. And in this game, he impacted the game as a playmaker. He impacted the game defensively, and he went 3 for 5. And so it's much easier to see his impact on this contest. And in 33 minutes, you had him. And I think that the lone bright part, the lone bright spot of this game was when the Spurs were out executing you down the stretch. How did they do it? Well, one way that they did it was with a unbelievable Chris Paul 3. It's just if he shoots that same shot under those same circumstances, I would think that even Chris Paul, who's a Hall of Famer, misses all but that one. All but that one. Because whenever you put Caruso, and Dort on the floor to close games when you need stops, look at how it's initially Dort. Chris Paul calls for a screen. Then it's Caruso. And if he would have called for the screen on the opposite side of the ball, he would have had to deal with Cason Wallace. So there is no reprieve. Even when you get the screen and even when you get the switch, there is no time to breathe if you're Chris Paul or anybody else. It just so happened that Chris Paul hit a massive shot. And then Zach Collins hit a massive 3. Zach Collins hit a massive 3. And we haven't even talked about Keldon Johnson, which I know many of you are shaking about listening to this show. But the biggest story from the Thunder's perspective, and we'll talk about Keldon Johnson coming up, Alex Caruso is just not there offensively. 1 for 7 from the floor, 0 for 5 from 3, 5 rebounds, an assist, 3 steals, 2 blocks, a turnover. What I think should be highlighted first before we dive into the negatives, he was a -2 in his minutes. It's clear he makes a positive impact on this roster. Again, -2 in a game that you got down 21, in a game that the Spurs controlled for the majority of these 25 minutes. Pretty good from him. But he's just not at all alive offensively. I mean, he is dead on arrival whenever he enters the arena on the offensive end. And the frustrating part is there's really nothing to rant and rave about. Like, there's nothing to hang your hat on. There's no fix. What do you want the Thunder to do? What do you want Mark to do? What do you want me to say? It's similar to what we talked about with Queso on Sunday. Tell me of those 7 shots. Which shots do you want back? You just want to see him go in, which everyone does, and Caruso does, and Mark does, and the Thunder do. But which shot did you want him to not take? He's taking good looks. He's just abysmal right now. He could not purchase a bucket. He's due for an extension in December. That money can't buy him a bucket. And it's really to no fault of his own in the sense of, he's taking quality looks. He's playing within the system as best he can. The ball's not going his way. And I think that when you see him start to miss, like where he's open at the break and he misses to the other side of the rim, when you see those misses, I don't know, it typically makes me think that like maybe it's starting to get into your own head a little bit. And now you're pressing. Now you're trying to shoot yourself out of a slump. And now you're making matters worse for yourself instead of just relaxing and playing your game. And I still have the Caruso theory, like the Gordon Hayward theory. Like, yes, Gordon Hayward was awful. Gordon Hayward was at the end of his career. Clearly, he retired after the season was over, despite comments from his wife. He didn't have any juice left. Like that gas tank was siphoned by that calf injury in LA. But another element of why I'm so curious to see how Caruso comes along and any other veteran that ever gets thrown into this mix is because the Thunder play such a wacky style comparatively. Like take Caruso, for example. When you play off LeBron and AD, when you play off of Levine, when you play off of DeRozan, when you play off these guys, it's pretty black and white. It's pretty cut and dry. When LeBron sends the ball to me in the corner, shoot the ball. That's it. That's all you got to worry about. That's all you got to do. When LeBron finds me on a cut, take it up. And so you play that way, and the majority of the NBA is played that way, to where it's 2 ball-dominant guys, maybe 3, and the rest are just marginal players who do as they're told, so to say. Then you get plucked and plopped into this Thunder system, and everybody's live. When you get the ball swung to you, it's up to you to go create to a certain degree. It's up to you to decide, okay, 2 of my teammates just passed up a good shot. This is only a good shot, not a great shot. Do we keep working or do we settle for this shot? There's so many processing mechanisms and so many check boxes to check that I think it does make it harder for veterans. Now, this theory can never really be confirmed until at least we have, larger sample sizes, because nobody's going to really outright say this theory is true, or probably not even dispel it. But I just wonder if that's part of the struggles, because Caruso is too talented at basketball to be this bad offensively, and he's taking too many good looks. Like if he was just out there jacking stuff up, and he's taking sidestep, step back threes, that you wonder, do you work on that shot? Do you practice that shot? Then that'd be a different story. But it's the looks that he's missing that makes me think, A, he's kind of in his own head a little bit, which we'll never know. And B, this is just a tough system that if you're not brought up in it, if this is not kind of what you are only used to and only know, it's tougher to adapt to. Now, let me be clear. This is not saying that Caruso will head the same way that Gordon Hayward did. You're not going to send him to the glue factory. You're not going to expect nothing from him. I'm curious about this theory because, unlike Hayward, Caruso has a much larger runway. We're not even at Turkey Day yet. I mean, we haven't made it to Turkey Day. We haven't made it to Santa Claus Christmas. We haven't made it to any of these hallmarks in the NBA calendar. I know that we want to overreact, overanalyze, and discuss every single game as if it's game 7 of the NBA Finals. We're not even in the stretch of the season, much less the home stretch. To be quite honest, you look around at the NBA ratings, and most people have not tuned into the sport yet. So there's plenty of time to get adjusted, number one. Number two, if you want to act like he should be adjusted by now, okay, this was his first game back from an injury, I would remind you. So we'll just have to wait and see. But that's my only really theory on Caruso. I know a lot of you want me to talk about Caruso and his poor offense. It is poor. It is not good. But that's the only real explanation I got. That's kind of it. Let's talk Mark's rotations and Adam Flagler first half minutes. But first, I want to say right now, but good friends over at Prize Picks, go check out Prize Picks today, and you can get started with a $50 guarantee bonus instantly whenever you put in the code LOCKEDONNBA. So you download the app, you use code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $50 instantly whenever you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you get that $50. Prize Picks can run your game. And what Prize Picks is, and it's available in Oklahoma, it is daily fantasy sports made easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. You can even do cross-sport entries if you want to. 2 to 6 players, and you just project will they have more or less than their Prize Pick projections. It's that simple. So will Shai have more or less than 25.5 points tonight? Boom. If you hit more and he goes for 30, you win. And so it's that simple. It's that easy at Prize Picks. Go download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly on your first $5 play. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. When you look at this game, one thing that caught the attention of everyone was Adam Flagler's first half minutes. I tell you, I don't use Do Not Disturb often, but when he checked into the game, I needed that Do Not Disturb button on. Multiple texts, DMs, luckily no phone calls, about Adam Flagler first half minutes. And we like to admit our biases on the front end. I've had Flagler on this very podcast. I profiled Flagler last week for Thunder on SI, which you can go check out. Huge Adam Flagler guy. He's a great guy. Great person. And I think he has the ability to be a really good player. He's not at the NBA level quite yet. Now, I will say for Flagler, before we get into anything else, go back and watch his defensive clips. And I know that people hate defense and it's kind of harder to observe, especially in real time. But he's defending better than he ever has in his career. Like better than he was at Baylor, way better than he was at Baylor, better than he was a year ago coming off that knee injury. The defense is there. Now, he's a shooter and a pretty rhythmic shooter who shot 1 for 7 tonight from 3. Very tough to get into that rhythm in 10 minutes. And there's the clip going around of him having his shorts on backwards like Doug Gottlieb and Allen Fieldhouse. Whatever. I don't really care which way the logo's facing. You got to make those shots. And he knows that. Like he knows you've got to hit those shots when you're open. And if a couple of those go in, you think that this is the difference. Like this is how thin the margins are. If Flagler goes 4 for 7, you think Mark is a genius. How does he keep doing this? What a mastermind. He goes 1 for 7, and now people are calling for Mark's job and saying he's got to tighten his rotations and kind of spinning in the face of what got this Thunder team to this point. And that's the reactionary game that I can't play. And I'll admit that right now. Like if you're looking for that reactionary game and each single game, people's heads are being called for and everybody's on the chopping block, there's plenty of outlets for you to get that. But let's think about this from a fundamental standpoint. Why did Adam Flagler play? It's a fairly simple answer, I think. Now, I haven't heard if Mark got asked about this. I'm obviously not in San Antonio, so I couldn't ask him about this. My guess of why Adam played is that you're without Isaiah Joe. Who can recreate what Isaiah Joe does? Well, to answer that question, what does Isaiah Joe do? Isaiah Joe shoots the ball. He competes on defense. And he helps on the ball a bit. Not overly, but he does help. And that's a part of his game. Okay? What does Adam Flagler do? He shoots the piss out of the ball. He is better on the ball as a more advanced player on the ball, and he competes defensively. Now, go watch Adam Flagler's 10 minutes and tell me what he was trying to do on the court. He was standing in the same spots that Isaiah Joe stands in. He was spacing the floor the same way Isaiah Joe spaces it. He was taking the looks Isaiah Joe takes. The ball just didn't go in. So it's kind of like that scene from Moneyball where you're trying to recreate Giambi in the aggregate. Like you tried to recreate Isaiah Joe and the element to the offense that he brings and the element to the game that he brings, but couldn't quite do it. Like the shots just didn't go in. Now you did win the Adam Flagler minutes by 6 points, but no one wants to talk about that. Nonetheless, though, I will admit this was not a banner night for the Flagler fans, but I think that it's very explainable. So you can, in my opinion, you should put your pitchforks away regarding Adam Flagler and regarding that decision. The decision has a direct corresponding reason, and the reason's pretty sound. Now, you could say that if you were the head coach, you would shorten things up. We talked about playing Wiggins more. That's 10 minutes you just could have force-fed to Wiggins and asked him to play an abnormal 30 minutes a game. That's 10 minutes you could have sprinkled around to Kenrich and to AJ and to some of these other guys. Sure. But the simple act of playing Flagler, I think, is explainable. But everyone is going to be mad about this game. Like, there's no sugarcoating it, and you have every right to be mad about this game. Now, I did not think that anyone had a right to be mad about Dallas because Dallas was just you were never going to win that game whenever you played Dallas without any bigs. This game, you have at it. However long you need to be mad about this, if you need to hold this win or loss against the Thunder the whole season, you're not going to hear any complaints out of me because this was brutal. But there are points that people are making in the comments. I tweeted out that we'll talk about this game, so let me know how you're feeling. And I've tried to address these along the way. I appreciate everybody who commented on that post on X. The comments, though, have been therapeutic, not necessarily productive. Like, I get it. You want to vent about Flagler, but I think that it's pretty clear why he played. Now, the Spurs saw Keldon Johnson just light it up, have a fantastic season game in the first half, relatively quiet in the second half, but still had a massive rebound, still did some really good things. Stephen Castle was not good offensively, but man, was he special defensively, including that block on Shai on that fast break. And Chris Paul had a vintage Chris Paul night. Like, this is a guy who's been reserved offensively. This is a guy who unlocked an NBA. I called for him to start shooting the ball more. He shot the ball more tonight. He went 5 for 10 and 4 for 7 from 3 with a banged up thumb. And Zach Collins, who you really had to gear up for, had allowed 12 points. And it's not even necessarily the 12 points from Collins that kills you. It's that you let up the 12, and off of letting up the 12, because you still were trying to shut him down. You still were swarming him, collapsing on him. While you're trying to shut him down, you're seeing all these other holes in the boat pop up. Like you tried to plug that Zach Collins hole, and another water spout spouted up. So that's what it was. Again, I will say it because I know that people want to hear it. It's a terrible loss. Terrible loss. But the biggest thing to me is how they respond against Portland. Understanding the injury situation, I think that the tone and tenor of this podcast will be much different tomorrow night if it's a third straight loss. Because then you start to ask the question, well, why? Like it wasn't that you lost to the Spurs tonight. It is, but it's also that you had zero intensity for a lot of this game. You had zero connectivity for a lot of this game. You had zero defensive principles for a lot of this game. You just were flat. You were as flat as a Sonic Dr. Pepper sitting in the back of a 2010 Honda Civic in the middle of the July that's been there since last August. That's how flat the Thunder were tonight. That is the last time this happened was billions of years ago in dog years for Oklahoma City. It can't happen 2 nights in a row. It cannot happen against Portland. You got to go compete. You got to go take it. And you really got to wash this bad taste out of your mouth, because then you get the 5 straight off days. Then you head west. And so to tie the bow on how we started the show with that, this play is off to a much harsher script than last week. Last week, the script was simple. Go beat up on the Clippers, go beat up on the injured Pelicans, and go 1-1 against the Spurs. Against the Suns and the Mavericks. Check, 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 check. This week, you thought you had a perfect script. Hey, overwhelm the Spurs with your talent. Go beat the dormant Portland Trailblazers. Enjoy your days off. And maybe you get a little early Christmas gift with Isaiah Hartenstein coming back on Monday. If that is the case, 0 for 1 so far. 0 for 1 so far on the week. So we'll see. It's a big week. It's a big week because you got to win on Wednesday, because here's the deal of why this game is so big. And the only thing I think that matters about this win long term, if you don't have this utopic situation where you see Hartenstein return Monday, if that doesn't happen, you would have loved to stack this win, because the Kings without a big man is going to be the same boat as the Mavericks. You're just not going to win that game. So you're really banking now on Hartenstein coming back sooner than later. And we'll see if that ends up being true. But you would have loved to store these wins for rainy days. The rainy day came a bit early. As often, meteorologists were wrong again. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.